Live from London, this is BBC News. President Biden says the US would not support any potential Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear sites after Tehran launched a barrage of missiles at Israel on Tuesday. 5 people are killed in Beirut as the Israeli military bombs a building close to the center of the Lebanese capital. These are live pictures from Beirut as the IDF continues to target Hezbollah. A former Singaporean transport minister becomes the city-state's first ex-cabinet member to go to jail. And prosecutors in the election interference case against Trump alleged the former president resorted to crimes to overturn the 2020 election result. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Sally Bundock. We start in the Middle East, where President Biden says he will not support any attack by Israel on Iran's nuclear sites in response to Tuesday's missile barrage by Tehran. The US president has spoken to other world leaders in the G7 and called for any retaliation from the Israelis to be proportionate. The Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said he did not want a war, but warned if Israel retaliated, Iran would respond more severely. Israel has continued its bombardment of the Lebanese capital. These are the pictures we're receiving this morning from Beirut, which has been hit hard by a series of explosions in the center overnight. Lebanon's health ministry said at least 5 people had been killed. The IDF says it carried out what it calls precise strikes on a building that is used by Hezbollah. Israel has issued a fresh call for civilians to leave parts of southern Beirut. Meanwhile, Israel's military says 8 of its soldiers were killed in the first 2 days of its ground invasion of Lebanon. Hezbollah says it fired guided missiles at their tanks as Israeli airstrikes have continued across the south of Lebanon and in Beirut. With the details, here's our Middle East correspondent Lucy Williamson.
Israel's Air Force was defending other targets when Iran's missiles came, slipping through defences to hit several air bases, like this one at Nevatim. Another, narrowly missing an intelligence base in Tel Aviv. The crater it left, filled with visions of what if. The US said this attack had twice the scope of Iran's last bombardment in April. Not all the targets hit were military. One landed in this residential suburb of Tel Aviv. Neighbours rushing through repairs before the Jewish New Year.
Close.
Temporary solutions to the problems of a regional war. 83-year-old Shmulik's home, one of more than 100 houses damaged here.
Everybody was scared because the blast, it was an enormous blast. And when we get out of the shelter, we saw something not from this world. All the house was with glasses, no windows, no doors.
The impact site, around 100 meters from his front door. Another what if. This is the second time in 6 months that Iran has attacked Israel directly. Actions that were once seen as red lines are now becoming routine. Each time, the line between message and miscalculation is paper thin. And each time, demands a response. Israel's Prime Minister has promised a response will come.
We are in the middle of a tough war against Iran's axis of evil, which seeks to destroy us. This will not happen because we will stand together, and with God's help, we will win together.
Israel has been crossing red lines itself, sending these soldiers into Lebanon this week. A limited and targeted incursion, it says, to destroy Hezbollah tunnels. But another 4 brigades were called up today. and villagers in the south of Lebanon told to leave their homes and move north. Also today, the first Israeli casualties airlifted out of the combat zone. 8 killed and others injured. Men from Israel's elite commando and infantry brigades. The youngest of them, 21 years old. 2 days into this war, Israel is facing the risks of old conflicts, weighed against the risks of playing by new rules. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Israel.
Well, let's talk about the latest developments with Mark Schwartz, who's former US security coordinator for Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and now an analyst with Rand Corporation. Mark, good to talk to you. So first of all, your reaction to President Joe Biden saying he does not support any potential Israeli retaliatory strike on Iranian nuclear sites. The issue is, will Israel follow that lead or not, I guess?
Yeah, so I think that's, clearly yet to be seen. There's certainly concern on behalf of the Biden administration and the meeting that took place with the G7 of going after the nuclear facilities and potentially causing escalation beyond what Israel can, set conditions for going forward. There's been discussion about openly about, a proportional response. That'll be interesting to see, given, almost 200 ballistic missiles came in and had, 1 or 2 of those ballistic missiles that have an explosive yield of over 1,500 pounds. Some of the smallest ones been effective and taken, out a mass casualty or caused a mass casualty event. We'd be having a much different strategic dialogue, I think, over the last 24 hours than what we're currently having.
Yeah, I mean, as we say, we're all waiting anxiously to see what Israel's next move will be. And of course, President Biden is in conversation and his team with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government in Israel. It's just whether the Israelis will be adhering to the US's pressure this time or not, as they did so in April.
Mm-hmm. True, they did. And, clearly, there's vital U.S. interest at stake. We've got over 40,000 U.S. forces deployed. There's many nations, to include the UK, that have forces in the area. And they are part of this coalition that's been supporting the defense of Israel since October 7th. And frankly, the alliances or relationships well before the alliances or relationships well before that. There's also concern among the Gulf states. Jordan was very effective in April, and they were very effective over the last 24 hours in assisting and defending Israel. While that's not publicly spoken about, they certainly played a key role, and I imagine some of the other Gulf states did as well. And they are concerned about, escalation and the broadening of this conflict beyond what it is today.
What's your reading of the situation at the moment? What do you think will happen next?
Well, I fully expect, Israel to respond in a much more broad way than what they did, going after an air defense system by, in proximity to one of the nuclear facilities like they did last April. So, there's no shortage of military targets. And I think Israel, even more so than the United States in many cases, has very exquisite intelligence in Iran. I mean, that's been demonstrated through, a multitude of strikes they've done against, technocrats and scientists that support their nuclear program, certainly against other targets over the course of the last, 5 to 10 years we've seen play out. So I think going after their ballistic missile storage facilities, some of the launch facilities, the fixed launch facilities that they can target, command and control, potentially going after the IRGC headquarters and including IRGC leadership, maybe potentially Salami themselves, if they can effectively locate him and target him if he's not, deeply underground, which I imagine he is right now. So there's no shortage of targets that Israel can go after, short of going after petroleum production facilities or going after, the nuclear facilities that they have arrayed across the country.
Okay, Mark Schwartz, thank you very much for joining us and giving us your take on the latest developments in the Middle East. Well, in the meantime, a charter flight organised by the UK government to evacuate British nationals from Lebanon has landed at Birmingham Airport late last night. Ministers say a second flight will take off later today, if it is safe to do so. Our correspondent Phil Mackey has been hearing from some of those who chose to leave Beirut.
Safety at last. At 20 to 9 last night, the first special charter flight bringing British citizens out of Lebanon landed at Birmingham International Airport. It had been a long day, beset by delays, but at last passengers could relax.
Just arrived to Birmingham Airport from Beirut, feeling exhausted. To be honest, I don't really know what I'm feeling, but I'm grateful to be back and safe. We've had a really warm welcome here at the airport, which took me by surprise.
This is what they left behind. This was on Tuesday night in Beirut. Getting out of the city's become increasingly difficult. Many airlines have cancelled their scheduled flights, and the planes that are still flying in and out have to contend with the plumes of smoke caused by rocket strikes. It had been an anxious wait at the airport for those who'd managed to secure a seat. Born in Manchester, Samia has lived in Lebanon for 30 years.
It's crazy, so surreal. I couldn't take it anymore. It was really, really nerve-wracking, and I'm very, very sad to go, but I'm coming back.
The Zaharuddin sisters knew it was time to leave, but hope they can go back soon.
Leaving, even for a short while, it's hurtful, especially because it's my country. But I think because the situation is out of hand, I don't really have any other option.
We're not going to be sure when we're going to be back, so we're just going to stay hopeful that it's not going to be for long and we're going to come back to our precious country.
The next flight is due to leave Beirut on Thursday, but it can only fly in and out so long as it is safe to do so. And there are still between 4,000 and 6,000 British citizens in Lebanon. Defence Secretary John Healey has been in Cyprus, meeting the forces preparing for a potential large-scale evacuation by a different route. Until then, it's hoped more flights like this will make it out. Phil Mackey, BBC News, Birmingham.
Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Now let's head to Singapore, where a court sentenced the former Transport Minister Subramanian Iswaran to 12 months in jail for corruption and obstruction of justice, making him the first ever former or sitting cabinet minister to be jailed in the city-state. He did plead guilty last month after being accused of accepting gifts worth more than $300,000 US. That's more than 400,000 Singapore dollars. The kind of gifts he accepted were tickets to musicals and a Formula One Grand Prix, free hotel stays, international flights and a Brompton bicycle. Well, let's go live to the court now and join Suranjana Tawari, who is there for us. And yeah, this is quite a moment, Suranjana. Tell us more.
That's right. The kinds of scenes that we've seen outside the High Court, which is actually in the Supreme Court building in central Singapore, are very rare for Singapore. It consistently ranks amongst the least corrupt countries in the world. And here ministers are paid very high salaries, sometimes around $700,000 a year. And lawmakers justify those handsome salaries by saying that they deter corruption. So this case has had a lot of attention, and it's really shocked a lot of people here because it's something unheard of. As you mentioned, Iswaran becomes the first ex-cabinet minister in Singapore's history to go to prison. We're expecting his prison term to start on October 7th. He left the court a short while ago looking very somber because both the prosecution and the defence lawyers asked for less time. Prosecution asking for about 5 to 6 months, defence lawyers asking for about 8 weeks. But the main reason why he got such a long sentence, according to the judge, is that he accused him of abusing public office, and he said he did damage the reputation that the public has in public institutions by taking those lavish gifts while he was in office.
And Suranjana, for the global audience, is this dominating in Singapore, this story? Are people is this dominating in Singapore, this story? Are people closely watching this?
They are. Singapore is something of a unique democracy. It has had one-party rule in its entire history. But in recent years and months, there's been a series of scandals. There's been which was originally a corruption charge, which then was amended. And that's really damaged the image of Singapore as a place where there's low corruption and also a good place to do business. The ruling party, the People's Action Party, is facing a number of challenges, increasingly from a more influential opposition that got more seats in the last election. And Singapore has to call an election by November of next year. So it's going to be a really interesting time politically as well. And this case has certainly not helped matters.
OK, for now, thank you very much. Suranjana Tewari there outside the Supreme Court in Singapore. A US judge has unsealed new evidence in the federal election case against former President Donald Trump. Special counsel Jack Smith used the brief to lay out his case for why he believes Trump is not immune from prosecution for allegedly trying to overturn the outcome of the 2020 election. He claims Trump resorted to crimes in a bid to stay in power. He also alleges Trump knew his fraud claims were false and continued to make them after his advisors told him they were not true. Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. A spokesman for his campaign told CBS News the filing is falsehood-ridden and criticised its release. Now let's bring you some of the day's other news. One of 2 doctors charged in connection with the death of the American actor Matthew Perry has pleaded guilty to conspiring to distribute the drug ketamine to the Friends star. Mark Chavez faces up to 10 years in prison and is the 3rd person to plead guilty. Matthew Perry was found dead in the hot tub at his LA home last October. The Dominican Republic says it'll deport up to 10,000 undocumented migrants a week as it tries to tackle uncontrolled migration. The country's president blamed the international community's slow response to months of gang violence in Haiti and its failure to restore stability. Luis Abinadar said deportations would begin immediately and would follow strict protocols in order to guarantee respect for human rights. Scientists have identified the position, shape and connections of every cell in the brain of a fruit fly. Teams from the UK and US have published the most detailed analysis of an adult animal brain ever produced. Researchers say the work will lead to an avalanche of new insights into how our own brains work. To the US, where the President and Vice President visit some of the worst hit areas affected by Storm Helene on Tuesday. At least 180 people have died so far. Kamala Harris has been in Georgia, a crucial swing state ahead of next month's presidential election. She attended a briefing at an emergency operations center in the city of Augusta. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has been surveying the damage in both North and South Carolina, where almost half the known deaths have occurred. The visit came as the Secretary of Homeland Security told reporters that FEMA, which helps in the response to natural disasters does not have the funds to make it through hurricane season. Carl Nasman has been in North Carolina, just north of the hard-hit area of Asheville.
The announcement today by U.S. President Joe Biden sending about 1,000 additional military personnel into North Carolina alone. That will be welcome news in communities like this one. This is Green Valley, very remote, up in the mountains in the western part of the state. Where we are now, there's still no electricity, there's still no cell service, there's no internet service. So bringing in any kind of relief right now is going to be very useful. What we've heard from local mayors, local fire department officials, they're telling us that federal aid still hasn't really reached these areas. It's been difficult even to get in until about the last 24 to 48 hours. These roads have been blocked, downed power lines in the way. So right now what we're seeing is a very active repair and recovery effort. Over my shoulder, you might be able to see there's some teams now working down there to get some of these electric poles, utility poles back up, get communications restored. This area here, this is where that water really poured in during that storm. It came rushing down this valley. And what local residents tell us is it took out homes and businesses along with it. In this region, this really is the hardest hit region. We still know that there are people missing and there are active search and rescue operations still going on here. The death toll does continue to rise. There's fears it could go even higher still. But right now, this does look like a long rescue operation and a long recovery operation. We heard that from the Secretary of Homeland Security today, Alejandro Mayorkas, saying this is likely to be a multi-billion-dollar and multi-year recovery effort. One more note to talk about here. There are residents that we've talked to who simply lost everything, living in a mobile home park. The waters came up 5 feet high, spilled into their homes. The worry now is going to be that many of these types of people simply don't have flood insurance. They told us their homes have now been condemned. They're not sure what's going to happen next. This could be another unfolding disaster as we move forward, a financial one. If there's no flood insurance for many people here in North Carolina, where will they go next? How will they afford to buy their next residence? That will be something we'll have to see in the future.
Carl Nasman there reporting from Asheville. Now, the heightened tensions in the Middle East are reverberating throughout the world, well beyond the region. In New York, one of the city's biggest autumn cultural events, the New York Film Festival, opened amid pro-Palestinian protests. But as Talking Movies' Tom Brook reports from New York, one festival documentary produced by an Israeli-Palestinian film collective is directly addressing Palestinian concerns.
1, 2, 3, 4, occupation no more!
Pro-Palestinian protesters greeted festival goers on the first night of the New York Film Festival, although one of the most discussed festival films actually directly addressed Palestinian grievances. Called No Other Land, it chronicles the efforts of the Israeli military to demolish homes and evict Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. It's made by an Israeli-Palestinian film collective. Two men in that collective, Yuval Abraham, an Israeli journalist, and Basel Adra, a Palestinian lawyer who's lived on the land since childhood, are key figures in the documentary. Basel Adra told me what was in the film.
Real scenes from our daily life under the occupation, like the houses' destructions by Israeli bulldozers, and people's stories, like when their home got demolished, how they handle it, and people lose their life also for trying to have some of their life requirements.
There is little political rhetoric in this film. It's a story of individual villagers suffering, but it is not politically neutral. In the documentary, the Israeli military comes across as a brutal, heartless, occupying force. That was the aim of the Israeli-Palestinian Film Collective that put the documentary together.
We are a collective, so it's 2 Israelis and 2 Palestinians, and we filmed it over 5 years together, so we really captured this process of forced transfer. And we also filmed ourselves, so the story is also about our own activism and our own sort of co-resistance and work.
Thank you for your brilliant film.
The documentary has won praise for its filmmaking. Critics and film programmers have been impressed, particularly because it portrays a bond between a Palestinian and an Israeli.
It tells a story of the relationship between two of the filmmakers, the Palestinian lawyer and activist and the Israeli journalist. And it's a relationship that has some real complexity in it because the Israeli has a freedom of movement, and that the Palestinian doesn't, and it really illustrates this two-tiered system of justice there.
This documentary has generated a lot of interest among festival goers here in New York. When it was launched at the Berlin Film Festival earlier this year, it won a top award, and it's played at other key festivals. But so far, this film, with its controversial subject matter, hasn't been able to secure a distribution deal. But the heightened tensions in the Middle East are helping it to get attention. The film is eliciting a strong emotional response.
It was very painful and difficult to watch. It was hard to sit through, to be honest.
But some festival goers thought the documentary was a little imbalanced.
I worry a little when I see a story like this, especially when I think that the criticism against Israel after the October events, in my opinion, has been a little bit biased and a little bit ignorant of history. So at times I would worry a little that it just fuels a one-sided view of a problem that is complex.
No Other Land is not a film that will please the Israeli authorities. So far, its presence has been limited to festivals. But there is talk it could secure an Oscar nomination. If it does, this film and its criticism of Israel will reach a much bigger audience. Tom Brooke, BBC News, New York.
And we've got Business Today here next. I will see you in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there. With high pressure building in across the country, it looks like the next couple of days for most of us should stay dry with a good deal of sunshine around. But nights will be chilly with some mist and fog to greet us in the morning. So the next few days then, largely settled, some welcome dry and sunny weather for most of us. Here it is, our area of high pressure pretty much dominating the scene right across the UK. We've lost those weather fronts across the southeast. Could still just see the odd light shower towards East Anglia and the southeast, but most places will be dry. Lots of sunshine through the morning. Bit of fair weather cloud bubbling up into the afternoon. That could just herald the odd light shower, but most places will be dry. And the wind's a lot lighter too, a little bit fresher through the channel across Devon and Cornwall. Temperature-wise, doing pretty well. It'll feel very pleasant in the sunshine, around 16 or 17 degrees in the south, mid-teens further north. Now, as we move into Thursday night with clear skies, light winds, it's going to turn quite chilly again, particularly across Scotland and England and Wales. But the breeze, the cloud, outbreaks of rain will start to push into the northwest of the country by the end of the night. So temperatures here recover into double figures. But again, further east, it'll be chilly with a touch of frost and some mist and fog to greet us first thing on Friday. Friday, we've still got our area of high pressure dominating the scene for most of us, but these weather fronts, low pressure starts to push into the north and the west. That'll bring stronger southerly winds, more cloud for Northern Ireland, for western Scotland, where we'll see some showery bursts of rain. But southern and eastern Scotland and the majority of England and Wales will have another fine and dry day, a good deal of sunshine into the afternoon. And again, with light winds, temperatures reach highs around 17, maybe 18 degrees. Mid-teens further north and west. Now, some changes as we head into the weekend. It does look like this area of low pressure begins to encroach into the north and the west of the country, so it turns wetter and windier here. Further east, though, it stays dry into the first part of the weekend too. Some of this rain will pep up across Northern Ireland and western Scotland to become quite heavy into the afternoon. But eastern and southern Scotland and the majority of England and Wales, again, having another dry day on Saturday. But some rain will get into West Wales, southwest England later on with increasing breeze. Top temperatures again, 17 or 18 degrees, mid-teens further north. But the upcoming week does look more unsettled. It looks like this area of low pressure in the Atlantic will win out. It'll bring showers or longer spells of rain, but it'll be on the mild side with milder nights to come too.
Ukraine is just about holding the front here while the Russians have launched this fresh assault.
Everywhere you look, there are uprooted trees, there are bits of building, and the destruction is just in every direction.
Incendiary drones were dropped here. We know this was the military junta because the rebels don't have that kind of weaponry.
When you can hear the tear gas canisters being lobbed at the protesters.
There when the story breaks. BBC News. Follow on the app.
Morning. Come and have a seat. Now, of course, I'm not going to go easy on you. There are some really big questions we've got to try and get answers to this morning. But I'll be fair, and we We just want to hear what you've got to say. So, shall we get on with it?
We're rolling.
Here we go. Join me to hear from the biggest names inside and outside politics.
Sunday with Laura Koonsberg. Sundays at 9 on BBC One and iPlayer.
You get scared?
No, I don't get scared. I've covered many wars over many years.
It bothers me to think about North Korean surveillance. Anything left on a shred of paper or my laptop, could it put somebody else's life at risk?
It was always going to be a history-making election.
This is not the time to stumble over my words. My job is to expose how people are targeted because I'm a reporter who can do that.
Behind the stories. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
What happens next? Oil prices are creeping up with markets on edge as investors watch Middle East hostilities. Artificial intelligence bonanza. ChatGPT maker OpenAI takes in new funding, making it one of the most valuable startups in the world. Will he or won't he? Elon Musk is due to testify to the US markets watchdog over his Twitter buyout after a no-show last month. And shining a light on inclusivity in the arts, we find out about a campaign to boost diversity in the creative industries. Hello and welcome. You're with Business Today. I'm Sally Bundock. So let's get started focusing on what's going on in the Middle East, where, as you have been hearing, President Biden has said the US does not support an attack by Israel on Iran's nuclear sites in response to Tehran's missile strikes on Israel on Tuesday. So the US president said the Israelis had a right to respond to the attack, but they needed to do so proportionately. In the latest fighting, Israel has bombed a building in central Beirut. Both Israel and Hezbollah have reported a second day of intense fighting on the ground in southern Lebanon. Oil prices jumped on Tuesday over supply fears, with markets regaining ground as investors seemingly come to terms with the escalation. So let's have a quick look at how the price of oil is trading now. So as you can see, once again today, more than a 1% increase. The price of oil just below $75 a barrel. That is Brent. If we look at Asia and the share markets, it's a really interesting picture that we're seeing. So Japan is seeing a big jump, over 2%. That's because the yen has weakened significantly on anticipation of what might happen in the Japanese economy. But Hong Kong is down over 3%. Big profit taking going in Hong Kong. Over the last few days in Hong Kong, we've seen rapid increases on these markets in response to Chinese stimulus. So Chinese stocks have had a real rise in recent days. So today, profit taking going on there. But elsewhere, as you can see, share markets fairly muted, if not flat, as investors keep a very close eye on the Middle East. Here's our North America business correspondent, Ritika Gupta.
Stocks closed little changed in the US, reversing the losses earlier in the session on concerns over Middle East tensions. There was a dent to risk appetite. We know markets don't like uncertainty, and they're waiting to see Israel's response to Iran's attack and whether this could turn into a wider war in the region. One of the few sector groups that gained on Wednesday were energy stocks. That's as crude oil prices rose nearly 4% before retreating over fears of supply disruptions from the conflict. The big rush into safe haven assets like gold and US government bonds eased somewhat, but overall markets were in wait-and-see mode with a risk-off tone. And that overshadowed some positive news in the economy as private sector hiring, or ADP data, came in better than expected for September, adding 143,000 jobs last month. This suggests that the labour market is holding its ground despite some signs of weakness. But the focus will be on Friday's September jobs report. That's more likely to impact the market ahead of the Federal Reserve's next move on interest rates in November.
Ritika Gupta there. Well, many have warned one of the biggest changes we expect to see from any conflict in the Middle East is on the price of oil. In the past, it's risen sharply over fears of supply disruptions from one of the world's biggest oil-producing regions. But so far, the reaction, as you've just seen, has been fairly muted, and prices initially jumped strongly on the Tuesday intervention by Iran, but since then have pared back. So what can we expect going forward? Well, Gaurav Sharma is energy analyst at Oilholics, synonymous. Good to have you on the programme, Gaurav, liking the name of your organisation. So what do you think will happen next in terms of the price of oil? What's your prediction?
Very good to be back in the program. I think what we're looking at is that you've referred to the muted response, and that is primarily down to the fact that we have another dominant producer in the market in the shape of the United States. So the US right now is the world's leading crude producer, and that has kind of kept a lid on prices overshooting. So when a development like this happens, people turn to their screens and say, will oil overshoot? Now, if this had happened, say, 10 years ago, this is 2014 instead of 2024, you'd have seen at least a 5 to 8 to 10% jump. The fact that there is so much crude out in the market, not just from the US, but Brazil, Guyana, Norway, lots of options people have, especially for lighter crude, that has kept a check on what is a very profound and a very serious development for the market.
Ministers from OPEC Plus had a meeting yesterday. Of course, they will have discussed this in great detail. They themselves will be looking ahead as to what they need to do with regards to production cuts. What do you think?
I think largely OPEC, especially for the last 5-6 weeks, regardless of this development, has been a bit of a spectator because other non-OPEC players have stepped into the breach. Now, with this happening, I think OPEC is making the market aware that the Saudis in particular and OPEC in general has room for some spare capacity. So if tensions flare up in Iran, they could step in. But right now, I mean, what we've seen, the evidence in the last couple of years, that OPEC has actually desperately tried to support prices rather than sort of come to the rescue of the consumer.
OK, well, we will be watching very closely regardless. Gaurav Sharma, thank you for your time this morning and analysis. But now let's move on to technology, OpenAI in particular. It is the maker of the groundbreaking ChatGPT. It's become one of the most valuable startups in the world. OpenAI has raised some $6.6 billion in funding as investors bet big on the market-leading artificial intelligence developer. As major backer Microsoft increases its stake and chip-making giant NVIDIA joins the party, the deal gives the tech firm a value of $157 billion, and that is similar to the investment banking giant Goldman Sachs. And more than most America's biggest companies, OpenAI has been making headlines lately as it reportedly looks to restructure, removing control from its non-profit board and allowing its chief executive Sam Altman equity. Well, let's unpack this with Fiona Cincotta from City Index. Hello to you, Fiona. I mean, we knew that they would be pretty successful in raising funds. Everybody wants a bit of OpenAI at the moment, don't they?
Massively. I mean, this was very oversubscribed. There was a lot of demand, and that's basically because OpenAI is expected to sort of lead the next wave of generative AI. The expectations are for revenue to almost triple next year to 11.5 billion from its sort of roughly 3 billion level at the moment. So, this is a stock that really is expected to be at the very sort of foundations of the next level of generative AI. And because of that, there was really strong demand. And as a result, there was also some very sort of particular arrangements to the deal for funding. So, for example, there were requirements for exclusivity, and this, as you also mentioned, was done on a convertible notes basis. So basically, that's sort of on the conversion to equity is very much hinging on this successful structural change from that into a for-profit organization from the non-profit organization that it is at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is being reported in the Financial Times, isn't it? I don't think OpenAI has made a statement about this or anything yet, but it is said to be seeking these exclusive relationships, which means for those companies that choose to invest in OpenAI, that's quite a big deal for them, isn't it? Because it means they cannot then invest in other AI platforms. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So that's that sort of exclusivity funding arrangements, and it basically restricts these, investment firms from investing in other rivals. And basically it works by restricting rivals' access to capital. So that does also mean that OpenAI can, to a degree, sort of maintain that sort of first to market sense and that leading advantage that it has. And it's quite a strange requirement. It's rarely insisted on, but given that perhaps there's quite a lot of sensitive information, the fact that it's oversubscribed and the fact that they want to form close relationships with their investors, that's the most likely reason that's being cited for being behind this.
Okay, and as you say, they are so wanted right now that they can make these kind of stipulations. Fiona, thank you so much. Good to see you. We'll see you again soon. Fiona Chincotta there from City Index. Well, interestingly, Elon Musk, the world's richest man, he, of course, has his AI company. It's called XAI. So I would imagine he will not be happy at all to hear about OpenAI seeking exclusive relationships. It could impact his ambitions in this area. The multi-billionaire, who's owner of Tesla, of course, as well, and SpaceX, is due to testify today to the US financial watchdog, the SEC, over his $44 billion buyout of Twitter, which is now called X. Mr. Musk was due to testify in September, but he didn't show up. Meanwhile, Tesla shares closed over 3% down on Wednesday on the back of its latest vehicle delivery numbers. They were up in the 3 months to September compared to last year. That's the delivery numbers, but still fell short of market expectations. However, Tesla is still in position as the world's top EV maker, above China's BYD, which is constantly snapping at its heels. Well, let's discuss this with Nishit Madlani, who's Managing Director of Autos Business and Technology at S&P Global Ratings. Good to see you. So another busy week for Elon Musk. He is rarely out of the headlines. If we start with his grilling about the acquisition of Twitter, now known as X, what do you think will happen today?
Yeah, look, first of all, thanks for having me. What I will say is that from a management and governance perspective, from a rating standpoint, we've always viewed this as a moderately negative situation. Look, the company has had corporate governance reforms following that take private investigation by the SEC. So they've done a few things that went the right direction. There was a settlement in September 2018. But big picture, we just view the key person risk as very high, given the very dominant role that Elon Musk has. And of course, relative to most automotive companies, the company will remain overexposed from regulatory scrutiny. They have the exposure to their direct-to-consumer sales model, their robo-taxis, data protection issues. But one pertinent aspect is that none of these lawsuits or investigations so far have had any material impact on their brand or their financial condition.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to make, because whilst all this is going on, X is still seeing huge amounts of traffic, which is becoming more and more intense in the run-up to the US election. Having said that, though, I don't know what their ad revenues look like for X currently. And Tesla still, managing to stave off BYD, although, of course, in China's market, it is losing market share, isn't it? Which is somewhere where it was very strong a few years ago.
That's right. And they actually released their production numbers for Q3 just yesterday. And it was consistent with our expectation. Big picture, about 470,000 vehicles produced. And our expectation was they'll hit a delivery run rate of about 2 million sometime next year. So they appear to be on track for that. On your point on China, I think one silver lining for Tesla relative to most Western automakers is, even though we've seen slowdown in growth, in EVs in North America and Europe, China is still remaining fairly strong. And actually, Tesla has been offering some attractive leasing and financing terms. So I won't be surprised if we see some stability when they announce their Q3 results for that market.
Okay, Nishit Madlani, thank you very much for giving us your take on what's happening.
Thanks for having me.
Now let's stay in the US, where a strike by port workers all along America's eastern seaboard continues. US business groups have warned of economic paralysis just 5 weeks before the presidential election. Unions have turned down the latest pay offer of a 50% raise, with automation at ports a major sticking point. Speaking to the BBC's Sumi Somaskanda, US Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg says these issues can be overcome.
Those concerns are addressable. There was language in the last contract for dock workers that spoke to those issues. Obviously, this is an example of this sort of thing that the two parties have to come to terms on, but believe that that can absolutely be done. Certainly, we have seen in other countries that have a very strong labor tradition and labor protections, ways that has been addressed in collective bargaining. And the bottom line here is that we believe in the collective bargaining process and its capacity to create not just the terms around issues like that, issues like benefits, but also just the basic question of pay. These workers went without raises in some recent years, including 2020, which was a year when they went to work. COVID was going on. Many of them lost their lives doing a job that can't be done over Zoom. And it's understandable that they want to participate in the astronomical profits that have been accruing to shipping companies in recent years.
So, Secretary, let me ask you, what are the economic consequences if this work stoppage continues over a longer period of time?
Well, certainly a prolonged stoppage would have impact across our supply chains and would affect the economy in a number of ways. Even a short stoppage is disruptive, which is why we're urging the parties to quickly come to terms.
Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. This is Business Today. Now, many of us have been grappling with the effects of inflation and a cost of living crisis, but that has eased substantially in the UK, Europe and US, where the high prices have been tamed thanks to aggressive action from central banks. But spare a thought for the businesses and households in Turkey, where they're also seeing similar aggressive central bank action, and the main interest rate there is now sitting at 50%. To tackle soaring inflation. Is this working? Well, Guldem Atabay is an independent economist in Turkey and joins me now. And I understand you'll get your latest inflation numbers today. What will they tell us about inflation in Turkey?
Well, we'll see the year-on-year inflation continuing to decline from around 75% peak in May. Now it stands at around 52% levels as of the late of August. But the September inflation with the monthly inflation, although it's not going to be in line with the central bank's target level on monthly terms, we'll see the year-on-year inflation continue to dive below 50% just because of the base year effect. But on monthly terms, the central wants to see it around 2.5% in September and October, and around 1.5% in the last 3 months of the year, which we're not there yet.
OK, so is it fair to say that raising interest rates to 50%, and they were at 8.5% originally, weren't they, that has done the job of pulling down inflation? Is it as simple as that?
Well, it's not as simple as that, obviously. Well, we have the monetary policy in the correct path finally after all this time, right after the general elections of 2023, so that we'll see the inflation coming down to 45% level by the end of this year. But still, the target level is obviously single digit inflation, which is not a very credible target for in the eyes of the market as well as the household. But still, some 20-25% inflation looks doable by the end of 2026. But what we say is that the monetary policy has done its course. We now need to see the fiscal policy aligning with a tighter monetary policy, which is not the case despite all the promises. So we need to see the budget spending being cut down.
There's still a lot of work to do then. In the meantime, how are people, how are businesses, how are households coping with the high prices and also the very high cost of borrowing?
Well, the GDP growth just turned negative as of the third quarter of this year, so people are feeling the burden heavier compared to previous quarters, where we had the local elections in the first quarter. But the firms are struggling. We had the PMI figures at the start of this week. We've seen the manufacturing sector shrinking very rapidly, or the shrinkage gained pace. We see the consumer debt, the credit card debts being restructured by the government. So people are struggling both in the financing side, for the companies and for the households, but banks are doing well.
Is President Erdogan as well being quite hands-off when it comes to what the central bank does now? Because prior to his re-election, he was intervening all the time and forcing the central bank to reduce interest rates, which is partly why your inflation got so out of control.
Well, partly, mostly why that was the reason. But so far so good, because they had spent all their options before the general elections, and it wasn't the Turkish economy was on a very unsustainable path. So Mr. Erdogan had nothing else to do but to stay at the sidelines, and gave directions to Mr. Mehmet Şimşek as the finance minister. And he was just recently in New York with Mehmet Şimşek, our finance minister. So he gave the same message. I think Şimşek has earned time from our president for the inflation to level down to some 20-25% levels. But beyond that, we don't know whether he'll intervene again.
Güldüm Atabay, thank you for talking us through it all. It's very interesting. We will find out later what the inflation rate is. Thank you so much in Turkey. Now, here in the UK, there has been a success story in recent years for the creative industry. So we're talking about fashion, computer gaming, film and TV, a sector that is growing at something like twice the pace of the UK economy. But for many, it can feel out of reach, with the proportion of working class creatives more than halving since the 1970s, and a new campaign is hoping to change all of that. Michelle Rhee is from the Gatsby Charitable Foundation, encouraging young people to take a brand new creative T-level course to get a foot in the door. Michelle, welcome to the programme. Now, do explain what a T-level is, because that's part of the problem with these courses. People don't understand them.
Exactly. The government launched T-levels back in 2020, but it's been a slow rollout. There's over 20 different subjects now, but the latest T-levels include these fantastic new T-levels in the creative industries. So we've got a craft and design T-level, which allows for careers from everything from jewellery making to wardrobe assistant to fashion design. And then also the media, broadcast and production T-level, which is all about film production, sound engineering, and it's employers that have worked with the government in developing these T-levels. So, for example, the BBC itself was part of the panel that helped develop the media and production
T-level. And these are vocational courses. So you take a T-level, you start at 16, end at 18 instead of doing A-levels. But they are the equivalent, aren't they, if you do well, if you come out with top grades, to 3 strong A-level results, meaning you can go to university if you take a T-level.
Absolutely. And we've got 2 years now worth of students who in different subjects have completed T-levels and have gone on to a range of things. So some have gone straight into work, into the areas that they've studied, or they've gone on to university to do that. But they've also done, a lot of them have been doing degree apprenticeships, which I think parents in particular are more and more interested in.
Well, yeah, it's a lot cheaper. You don't come out of university with, you know, tens of thousands of pounds of debt, which is a blessing. But in terms of how the T-level works, they spend quite a bit of time in work too, don't they? They're not just in the classroom, is that right?
That's it. So you spend 45 days of your time doing your T-level in industry. And that's really where it comes into its own, particularly in these creative sectors. Because I think for a lot of parents in particular, they're worried about getting their foot in the door when it comes to these creative sectors.
But Michelle, sorry to interrupt you because we're nearly out of time. I want to ask you, this is supposed to make this more inclusive and available to everyone. Are T-levels available across the country, or is it just specialist colleges, which means it's not that accessible?
It's available across the country, and it's not necessarily specialist schools and colleges. There are FE colleges and there's schools that are already delivering these T-levels in people's localities.
Okay. And so hopefully they will take off. There'll be more of an uptake as people understand, both parents and children, how they work. That's the idea, is it?
Absolutely. We want parents to be reassured that these are great options. We want young people to know that they're a great alternative to what's out there, whether it's an apprenticeship or A-levels, about getting into the industry that they're interested in. And in particular, it's employers that have backed them, and we need them to continue to back them and offer these fantastic industry placements as well.
Okay. Well, we shall keep a close eye. Michelle, thank you for getting up so early to tell us all about this. Michelle Rhee there from the Gatsby Charitable Foundation. I've got teenagers. It is complicated out there, let me tell you, but that's really helpful. Thank you for your time today as well. I hope you have a really good day, and we'll see you soon.
Hello there. With high pressure building in across the country, it looks like the next couple of days for most of us should stay dry with a good deal of sunshine around, but nights will be chilly with some mist and fog to greet us in the morning. So the next few days then, largely settled, some welcome dry and sunny weather for most of us. Here it is, our area of high pressure pretty much dominating the scene right across the UK. We've lost those weather fronts across the southeast. Could still just see the odd light shower towards East Anglia and the southeast, but most places will be dry. Lots of sunshine through the morning. Bit of fair weather cloud bubbling up into the afternoon. That could just herald the odd light shower, but most places will be dry. And the wind's a lot lighter too, a little bit fresher through the channel across Devon and Cornwall. Temperature-wise, doing pretty well. It'll feel very pleasant in the sunshine, around 16 or 17 degrees in the south, mid-teens further north. Now, as we move into Thursday night with clear skies, light winds, it's going to turn quite chilly again, particularly across Scotland and England and Wales. But the breeze, the cloud, outbreaks of rain will start to push into the northwest of the country by the end of the night. So temperatures here recover into double figures. But again, further east, it'll be chilly with a touch of frost and some mist and fog to greet us first thing on Friday. Friday, we've still got our area of high pressure dominating the scene for most of us, but these weather fronts, low pressure starts to push into the north and the west. That'll bring stronger southerly winds, more cloud for Northern Ireland, for western Scotland, where we'll see some showery bursts of rain. But southern and eastern Scotland and the majority of England and Wales will have another fine and dry day, a good deal of sunshine into the afternoon. And again, with light winds, temperatures reach highs around 17, maybe 18 degrees. Mid-teens further north and west. Now, some changes as we head into the weekend. It does look like this area of low pressure begins to encroach into the north and the west of the country, so it turns wetter and windier here. Further east, though, it stays dry into the first part of the weekend too. Some of this rain will pep up across Northern Ireland and western Scotland to become quite heavy into the afternoon, but eastern and southern Scotland and the majority of England and Wales, again, having another dry day on Saturday, but some rain will get into West Wales, southwest England later on with increasing breeze. Top temperatures again, 17 or 18 degrees, mid-teens further north. But the upcoming week does look more unsettled. It looks like this area of low pressure in the Atlantic will win out. It'll bring showers or longer spells of rain, but it'll be on the mild side with milder nights to come too.
It's a shame we don't have smell-o-vision, because I've just caught a whiff of frankincense, which, of course, was one of the main things that was traded by the Nabateans. Smells amazing.
Oh, it's a carving. That's a massive bit of ice falling off. That's what that sound was, a sound of thunder.
I've come back to Japan to visit some of the new world-first projects that could pave the way to a sustainable future.
I've got to say, as far as views go, this is pretty spectacular.
It is.
And I'm loving all the colours. You've got the pinky, kind of purple hues at the bottom.
Now, the best part.
Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you very much, Chef. Don't mind if I do.
Yeah.
Inspiring travel. Watch now on iPlayer.
Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Manchetti.
Our headlines today. President Biden has warned Israel against attacking Iranian nuclear sites. 5 people have been killed overnight in an Israeli strike in the heart of the Lebanese capital, Beirut.
A doctor in the United States has pleaded guilty to charges relating to the death of the Friends actor Matthew Perry.
100,000 newborn babies in England will be part of a genetic code screening programme to speed up life-saving treatments of rare illnesses.
And we hear from the brothers who've run the length of Britain in a quest to raise money to find a cure for early onset dementia.
Good morning. A rainy September drove shoppers away from the high street and put a dampener on the profits at some of our biggest retailers.
Good morning in sport. What a night to remember for Aston Villa in the Champions League. A stunning strike from Jean Duran sees them beat the mighty Bayern Munich in a repeat of the 1982 European Cup final.
Good morning. There's some mist and fog around this morning, particularly so across parts of Scotland. That will take its time to clear, but for most of us, it's going to be dry. There'll be some sunshine around, just the odd shower in the southeast. I'll have all the details shortly.
Good morning. It's Thursday, the 3rd of October. Our main story this morning. President Biden has said he would not support an Israel attack on Iran's nuclear sites in retaliation for the barrage of missiles launched by Tehran.
On Tuesday, Iran fired 180 missiles across large parts of Israel in response to Israeli military's ground invasion of southern Lebanon.
The conflict has continued to escalate overnight. Lebanon's health ministry says 5 people have been killed in a strike on a medical facility in Beirut. The Israeli military confirmed it had carried out a precision attack on a building said to be affiliated with the Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah. Our correspondent Peter Bowes has the latest.
More explosions ring out overnight in Lebanon. The Israeli army says it conducted a precise attack on Bashura in central Beirut, the first raid in the heart of Lebanon's capital. Lebanese officials say at least 5 people were killed and 11 injured in this Israeli strike on a medical facility, a building affiliated with Hezbollah. Earlier, the Lebanese health ministry confirmed at least 46 people have been killed in Israeli strikes in the previous 24 hours. And overnight, the US government has confirmed that an American man, 56-year-old Kamal Ahmad Jawad, is among those who died. The Israeli military says 8 of its soldiers were killed in the opening 2 days of its ground invasion of Lebanon. And this latest strike overnight came hours after a United Nations Security Council meeting where Israel warned it would retaliate if attacked.
We will defend our people, and our response will be swift and decisive. Those who attack us will face serious consequences.
Iran's unprecedented response, that barrage of missiles fired into Israel on Tuesday, has escalated this crisis just days before the first anniversary of the Hamas attacks last year on October the 7th. President Biden says G7 leaders are planning to coordinate new sanctions and other measures to respond to Iran's actions, but he did not support Israel striking Iran's nuclear sites.
The answer is no.